Hey everybody, starting live with our TAMCO Tech Thursdays. Today's topic is 2104 Clear, the iconic clear that we sell from TAMCO, the one that we probably sell more than anything of, the one that everybody loves. Kind of the classic cult favorite of TAMCO would be this clear. So what we're going to discuss today is all of the tech that I can basically think of on this particular clear, and as you guys join in, find ways, to ask me questions on the product, and then I will get you the answers on those products as well. So start thinking of your questions now on the 2104, and then as I'm kind of going through different things that I have to say about it, then as I see the comments coming in, I will try to answer those. Last time we did this, people who used the product also came in and was answering questions as well. So if you guys know the answer to the question that someone else is asking, please make sure to help them with the answer as well, because that would be helpful for me. If there's something I happen to see, like always, I'll go ahead and kind of, add some information to it. So I bumped the live to 9. I'm pretty sure my mom infected me with the flu. She has it bad, and I feel like I'm going downhill fast, so decided I wanted to kind of get this over with now and kind of maybe go to bed early tonight and maybe rest up for tomorrow. So before we get started on 2104, because a lot more people are joining, I figured maybe I'll do a little bit of recap on SEMA, maybe a little bit first. So thank you to everybody who actually made their way to SEMA and visited our booth, and a lot of the customers that we actually sell to on a regular basis. Some of them I met last year and the year before, but some of them I've never met before because this was their very first SEMA. So it was really cool for people to have come to the booth and introduce themselves and kind of put a name to a face or a face to a name, and realized to have conversations with the person that's a lot different in person versus having it online. So that was cool. The booth was really, really well, just everybody loved it. The whole setup, the guys, Mark at TAMCO did a really, really good job of actually constructing it and planning it out and everything else. It was an absolutely killer display that we had, and it had a lot of people's attention, which was really, really cool. And if anybody had seen it in person, then I really don't think you could disagree. It was a very clean, classic, classy display. It was a very classy display. It wasn't over cluttered. It wasn't overdone. It was tasteful. It was just, it's going to be hard to top it next year. We already have plans going on with different people that were there that we're discussing, how to top this year's SEMA's display for next year. So anyways, it looks like a lot more people are joining on. So we'll get started on 2104. Normally I have a label. I forgot my label today to kind of hold in front for you guys to be able to see. So 2104, what is 2104? 2104 is the clear that we have been making every single day since around 2001 is when we started making this particular clear. It's a 2-to-1 clear, 54% solids, and the mix ratio on it is 2-to-1 to 10%. So solids content. I'm big on solids content. I always can spout off the solids content. I get made fun of a lot for, pushing solids whenever other people don't really do that. But I kind of feel like when you know what the solids of your product is, you kind of understand the product better. You know when to push it, when not to push it. There's a reason we tell you what the solids content is, because a lot of guys would not understand how high solids it is, how much body it has, and then they'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to just do like I always do, and I'm going to put 7 coats on. Well, if you were to put 7 coats of 2104 on, that would be the equivalent of 11 coats of someone else's clear that you're used to using. That would be a problem. Doing that many coats at one time would be a problem. So knowing what your solids is a huge benefit in knowing when and where to push the clear, knowing that you don't need to push the clear as much as you think you do compared to other clears. So for instance, when you're doing 3 coats of 2104, 3 coats of 2104 on average, depending on your gun, depending on how you spray, if you spray heavy, depending on your tip size, remember all of that varies. Every bit of that varies. Your gun varies, your tip varies, your PSI varies, how heavy you are varies. So everybody might have a different result versus another person. On average, the average person spraying 2104, you're going to get about 4.5 mils of clear in 3 coats. That is a lot of clear. You're not achieving that kind of build with the average clear you're using. You're not achieving that build with any clear. Let's put it this way. You're not achieving that build with any clear at the price point at all. Non-existent. Doesn't happen. The only way you're going to get to that price point of where you're going to achieve this kind of build in like you get 2104 is if you were buying a Glazeret or a Spies clear where you're spending $500 and $600 and $700 a kit. Unless you're buying a clear that's at least a spease or a glycerate. You're not touching that solids. That's a big thing for us because that shows you the kind of quality. So solids doesn't just dictate quality. You could have a really high solids crappy clear, I guess, but other benefit things, other things that we do to 2104 make or break the clear, make it what it is, make it function the way that it functions, makes it a better product. That's part of what makes it a better product. So it is a clear where you can choose your hardener temperature between fast, medium, and slow. So the temperature, the kind of hardener that goes with it is the same hardener that we use in a lot of our clears. There's only 3 other clears that we sell that do not take the same hardener. So that's a good thing. So if you're using, like 4100 or 7600 or 9500 or high impact clear, all of those hardeners take the same hardener as the 2104. Good thing to have, when you have multiple clears on your shelf, knowing that you could always go grab another one. So that's a nice benefit about the fact that a lot of our premier clears all take the same catalyst. The only one that doesn't take the same catalyst would be the 2021 or the 2100 or the 1100 or the 1000. They take a different catalyst. The 2021 taking a completely different catalyst than any of the rest. And that's kind of what separates it. So what is 2104? What is it for? Who should use it? Why should you use it? Why should you maybe consider a different clear over 2104 depending on what you're doing? So 2104 would be a clear that's not just based for custom, even though it's ideal for custom. It would be based for restoration. It can be used in collision if you use it correctly. Different ways of using it. So take into consideration that if you're doing collision and you're doing a blend, if you were to be using 2104, say on a silver or white or like a white pearl, if you were going to be putting a lot of clear on that panel during that blend, you would actually throw the color off. A lot of people might not realize that. And it's not because of the clarity issue. It's got perfect clarity. It's crystal clear. It's because of the way it magnifies the look of the color. So if you're, say, doing a silver, and I've seen this happen and we've had this discussed in the group, and you were to do 3 heavy coats on your blend where the actual OEM doesn't even have that kind of mill build on it, you will be magnifying the look of it and it will throw your blend off. It's not adjusting the color. It's not making the color that you did wrong. It's magnifying it, therefore it's throwing it off. So 2104 in collision, I don't really like it for collision for that reason. I think that can sometimes be a problem. Now, if you're going to use it, you need to know how to use it. Never 3-coat 2104 in a collision job that you're doing a blend on. You're putting too much material. You're going to cause yourself a problem because of that. So if you're doing collision, you're doing a blend with 2104, 2-coat it. 2 coats is still plenty of material left on the panel that you have plenty of room for cutting and buffing or denibbing and polishing it perfectly. So when you're doing collision, I like to see no more than 2 coats, just 2 coats of 2104. The nice thing about 2104 when it comes to to custom or to restoration is the depth and the build that you're able to achieve. So a lot of guys do custom in this group. A lot of guys that I sell to do custom. It's not all we do. A lot of people think it's all we do, but it's not. We do a lot of different things. We do restoration, we do OEM, we do a lot of things. But a nice feature of using this clear when you're doing custom is that it will bury your lines, your flake, your graphics, your pinstripes very quickly. So if you're trying to, bury all of those things, and it typically takes you multiple sessions to do so, you'll be able to do that faster, less coats with 2104. So I have a lot of guys that tell me, I need to do 5 coats at a time, and I need to do multiple sessions. Well, when you're used to using a lower solids clear, you would have to do 5 coats at a time and multiple sessions. But when you're using a clear with transfer efficiency that's so good that you're achieving more mils per coat with this clear than you are with your other clears, you actually don't need to. Less is more. The biggest thing that I can stress about TAMCO, the biggest thing that I can stress about 2104 is that less is more. The number one question I get asked every single day about 2104 is, can I stack multiple layers? And when I explain to them, if you understand the product, if you know the product, yes. I have guys that can do 5 coats of 2104 all day long and never have an issue. And most people won't have an issue doing that. But if you don't know it and you 5-coat it, it might have all kinds of issues. You might have solvent pop issues. You might have issues where it's not drying the way you need it to because you have so much material there. So take into consideration that when you're using 2104, not only are you talking about a $169.95 price point for a gallon of clear and 2 quarts of hardener, you do need to get reducer. It doesn't come with it. But take into consideration that at that price point, It's yielding you about 1.75 gallons of material, all said and done, when you're adding reducer to it, and you're able to achieve build that you can't achieve with $169.95 clear in 3 coats. You're able to achieve build that you can't achieve in $450 clear from all the rest of the companies in 3 coats. I don't care who you throw out at me, unless you're spending well over $500 or $600, you're not achieving that kind of build this quick, this cheap. That's probably the main benefit of 2104, is that for the price point and for the quality of what the resins is that we use and for what it is and for what it does, it's a killer clear. It's probably the best bang for your buck, period. Hands down, on the market today, 2104 would give you that. So I like it for restoration specifically too, because when you're trying to, when you go to a car show and you see that car you really like and you're like, wow, just look at the gloss of that car, or, what did you do to achieve that gloss? What is it that you did to get it to look like that? And I'm not saying that everybody else's clears don't look good. They do. Do I think you have to work harder in many cases to get that same look, spend more money, do more things? Yes. So what I always find is that when I have conversations with these guys, and they don't know who I am when I walk up to them and I ask them, but I think it's kind of fun just to kind of, throw things out there just to kind of see the answers you'll get. I'll ask them, what is it you do? What is the step process here that you're doing? And every single person, when I see a job that looks really, really good, will tell me that there's multiple sessions behind that job. Meaning they did 3 or 4 coats or 5 coats. They blocked it down. They did the aggressive 600 wet sand. They blocked it down. They came back. They did another session where they do another 3 to 4 coats. Then they block it down again. They come back and they do it again. I have guys that do 3 sessions on these cars to achieve that look. The cool thing with 2104 is that you could achieve that look on these kinds of cars in 3 coats. 1 session, 3 coats. If you really want to push it to 4 coats, you could push it to 4 coats and you wouldn't have any issues and it would work fine as long as you know what you're doing and follow your proper flash times and proper hardener temperatures. And, knowing what you're doing goes a long way when you're using TAMCO. Most people I talk to, I find on average, do know what they're doing and they don't have any kind of problems. So what I'm saying is that for the price point, for time, being that time is money and the amount of time that you can shave off of a job is actually going to put money in your pocket, would be that you could actually achieve the job in 3 coats and be done. You could do 3 coats, wet sand it with 600, do the aggressive 600, and still have plenty of mill build there for protection. Now, why does mill build matter? Well, mill build has to do not just with the look and the depth, but it has a lot to do with the durability and the longevity. So when you have proper mill build, you know that you have proper amount of material to make it last. So people ask me, what is the difference between 4100 or 1100 or 2104 when it comes to quality? Why is one cheaper, one more money? Why does the mill build matter? Like, why is the solids less on one and why is the solids more on one? That matters because that's durability. So when someone says, what's the lifespan of a clear? Well, 4100 used as is, the lifespan will be a little bit less because there's less mill build. The lifespan of 1100 will be a little bit less than 4100 because it's a little bit less mill build. 1100, 4100, 2104, we're all using same kind of resins. We're all using the same high quality resins. So when you're spending $80 for your kit of 1100, you're not getting a crap resin. You're getting a high quality resin that we use in everything that we do. The difference is the solids content is less. That means that there is less mill build achieved per coat when using 1100. That means it would take more coats to achieve the same mill build that you would get with 2104, meaning it takes a lot longer to bury something with 1100 or 4100 than it would with 2104. So if you were to say take 4100 and you were to do say 4 or 5 coats, you would be at the same mill build as 2104 and 3. So can you achieve it using 4100 or another clear? Yes, but you achieve it slower and it requires more coats and more work. 2104 will achieve it faster. So when you achieve it faster, what does that mean? Well, it means that you have more material there for more protection. People want to say, UV matters. UV does matter, but UV is not the only thing that matters. And you guys have heard me say this before. You can have all the UV in the world you want in something that's not a quality product. it wouldn't matter. The UV won't make it stable. It won't make the resin better. It won't make it bury better. It won't make the sun not make it delaminate any better, because a lot of people think that it's only UV. But when you don't have proper mill build, when you don't have proper film thickness, you're going to have delamination too. The thinner the clear is, the quicker the lifespan dies out on it. Not just because of UV, but because there's not enough material there to keep it from eventually wearing down. The more that you do, like the more mills that you put, the more durability you have, the longer your longevity will be. So when someone says, what is solids content? Solids content is the amount of resin versus solvent when the solvent evaporates. So your gallon of clear is 100% when you get it. 100%. Between the resin and the solvent, it's 100%. The difference is, and I make it simple by saying this way, if you have 50% solids clear and you spray it, when you first spray it, it's got full solids. As the solvent evaporates out, that's what's left on the vehicle. So when you're spraying 2104 and the solvent evaporates out, 54% of what's left on the vehicle will be 2104. The rest that goes up in the air, that will be the solvent. So when you're spraying 4100, 45% of the material will be 4100. The rest will evaporate over the curing process. And then it will continue to evaporate. You have your initial first evaporation of the majority of the solvent that same time frame that you're doing it, over 24 hours. That's why if you're going to have dieback issues from lack of airflow, it's going to happen in the beginning because all of the solvent is escaping in the beginning. And if you don't have proper airflow whisking that solvent that's evaporating out away, therefore you'll have dieback issues. So when you're using, say, 2104, people ask me, how do you spray it? What is the best way to spray it? Well, guys who are heavy-handed will really like 2104 because 2104 wants to be pounded on. So I have guys that are like intimidated by it, and they get the clear and they're like, wow, this is, I thought I was using high solids. And I always say, you think you're using high solids until you actually get high solids. When you actually get high solids clears in your hand, you're like, okay, you're right. This wasn't high solids. You know how many guys I have tell me that they're using like, what is it, JC 620. I think that's the 2-to-1 clear from Shopline. And they're like, I'm using Shopline. I don't think it's that bad. It's more money, by the way, than 2104. Just for starters, JC 620 is more money. 630, whatever all of them are, is more money than 2104. Way less solids than 2104 and nowhere near the quality and very yellow. So when you're actually going to, just compare to what you're used to using, right off the bat, 2104 is less money, more solids, better clarity, better everything. So any of you guys who are watching right now and using those products, 2104 right off the bat will save you money and give you just way more increase over all of those. So can the product be temperamental? Yes, it can be temperamental. And there's guys who actually have used the product and they don't like it. Not everybody's going to like your product. That's just the way it is, depending on your setup, depending on your technique, depending on your conditions, depending on how you're used to spraying. Lots of things can make or break whether or not you're going to like a product. I find that if you don't like it, typically there's something environmental or something in your technique that you're doing that's making you not like it. And when I work with the person and kind of go over the steps of what they're doing, what are you doing? How are you spraying? What is your settings? What is your PSI? How far are you from the panel? How long are you flashing it? When you take into all these things into consideration, it kind of gives you a really good, map of how to help them kind of fix the problem. So if you're having problems and you're using 2104 and you're watching this and you're trying to learn some more tech on it and you're trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? Well, the number one problem that somebody will have with 2104, honestly, out of anything, will be orange peel. And you'll say, why does 2104 orange peel on me? 2104 is going to orange peel on you because you're not used to the body. You're not used to spraying that high solids of a clear. Me and my dad go back and forth on tech. He likes to push a lot more people on 4100 because 4100 is a lot easier to spray. I completely agree with that. But whenever you're not used, let me step back. Whenever you are watching people in the group, and you're watching people all use 2104 and they're making it lay like glass, you're like, I want that. I want that clear. So I could talk to you all day long and try to convince someone into 4100, but they're like, no, I want what's being used in the group. I want what I saw the other day that looks so good. If you're not getting the results that you see in the group, which I have people who call me and they'll say, I'm not getting the results that I see in the group. Once you go over tech with them, then you find out, well, okay, they were used to using like a Nason, clear, like what was it, the 498, I believe, which is a 2-to-1. I'm pretty sure off the top of my head it's a 2-to-1. They're used to using that. And they're like, oh, but it's really high solids. Well, compared to 2104, it's not high solids. So when you're used to using that and it sprays really nice, and then you're spraying 2104 and you're getting texture, the texture is just in your settings and how you're spraying it and your technique and everything else. That can be fixed. If the least of your problems is orange peel, I can fix that in 2 minutes of a phone conversation or a text conversation, and you can have that dialed in and fixed. So technique is a big thing when using 2104. The biggest thing that I want to say, and I see some of the comments going through, is hammer it on. It wants to be hammered on. A lot of people would say, that doesn't really make sense. If I hammer on my other clears that I'm using, it falls to the floor. It falls to the floor. Like, it doesn't like it. It runs on me. It sags bad. Now, that will happen when you're using like a lower solids clear and you hammer on a lower solids clear. It's going to fall to the floor. There's less body there. There's less to keep it on the panel vertically. A nice feature of 2104, something that a lot of people really, really like, is the fact that the clear does stick to the panels very, very well vertically. It has very high transfer efficiency. It sticks vertically. It's not prone to sagging. It's not prone to runs. Can you get them? Yeah, I've got them. I run 2104 all the time. I spray too heavy, and I spray things that I shouldn't spray as heavy as I do, but I do, and I get runs. It happens. So anyways, if you're hammering it on and you have the settings done properly, you won't get the same runs and different things on the edges and the lips of things like I do. But when you're doing, like when I do like a flat surface or something like that, it works perfectly. I don't have that issue. If I were to hammer it the same way, like on a skate deck or something, that's where I run into my issue because of the lip. It tends to sag. But when you're doing it like on a vehicle or a car or a motorcycle or anything like that, hammer it on and you won't have the issue. I had sprayed a Harley-Davidson tank, one of the really large tanks. And it was the first time I had ever sprayed one. I broke it up into 3 sections when I actually cleared it. I sprayed one side, the other side, and then the whole front. Kind of pulled it all together in the end. I hammered that on, didn't get one run, didn't get any orange peel, laid it out like glass. So if you manhandle the clear and you really, really spray it, like I'm talking literally hammer it on, flash it, come back with your second coat, hammer it on, flash it, come back with your third coat, hammer it on. It likes it. It can handle it. It's how it functions the best. If you were to take the clear and you were to not hammer it on and you were to be kind of intimidated by it and you were to put your first coat down as like a tack coat, it will screw up on you every time. You will never get past it. If you take it and you do a tack coat and you flash it and you come back and then you go heavy, it doesn't follow suit. It follows suit when you spray it heavy first, flash it, and continue that fashion. I have found that the only clear I can overly correct when I'm spraying that I don't like is 9500. If I spray 9500 the first coat, say it's not heavy enough, or I've just done something and I don't have the gun setting exactly the way I want it, and I don't like the way it looks, I can correct it on the second coat. I can come back and I can manhandle it and spray it heavier and correct it on the second coat and force it to flow out. 2104, from everything I've ever done, it doesn't like to be forced to flow out on the second coat if you don't make it flow out on the first coat. And I've had a lot of people say that, like, if you don't make it work good on the first coat, it does not flow well on the second coat. So that's why I always tell people to hammer it on, because it can handle it. So something else to take into consideration when you're using 2104. I'm very much a person who says your gun settings have to be based on the gun. When someone calls me and says, what do I spray 2104 at? I won't say 35-40 PSI. I'll say, what gun are you using? Because the gun that you're using matters. The gun that you're using has been designed and been constructed to function at a very specific PSI. Now, anybody can change their PSI, and you can change it to whatever you want if that works best for you. On average, you should always stick with what the gun manufacturer states and then adjust from there. The one thing that I notice about 2104, no matter what gun is it sprayed through, no matter which one it's sprayed through, is that it likes more PSI. I will go and say between 5 and 10% or 10 more PSI. Meaning, if you're normally at 35 at a SATA, or like really SATAs are typically no more than 29. But if you're about 29 with a CS with a SATA, I find that if you're not at about almost 40, you're not going to like the way it sprays. With an LPH 400, I typically have it set at 19 PSI when we're spraying. 19 is about the max you're supposed to be on an LPH 400. It does really good at about 24. I've sprayed it at 19, it's perfectly fine. But if you bump it up to about 21, to like 24, 25 PSI, and take into consideration, it is a lower it's a LVLP, meaning low volume, low pressure, meaning it likes to be at low pressure, but with 2104, because of how much solids content it has, it likes to be bumped up. So take into consideration that when you're using 2104, bump up the PSI and you will have a better outcome with it. It'll force it to atomize better. It'll force it to bust up better. Another thing I like to point out with 2104 over any of the other clears other than like 2021 is that your tip size matters. So when I first got into the business, everybody basically sprayed with a 1.4. That was industry standard. Everybody had a 1.4. Everybody's gun was a 1.4. No one used anything other than a 1.4 unless they were spraying like primer or something else. That was like industry standard. You sprayed your base coat with a 1.4. Tech sheets were written for a 1.4, all of that. I don't ever put a 1.4 in my hands, ever. I think that when you're using high solids clears, 1.2s and 1.3s are king. Literally king. I don't care if you're using any gun manufacturer. The higher the solids the clear, the smaller the tip. And I have so many people who tell me that that sounds insane, that doesn't sound like that should be right because the clear is so thick, it's not going to fit through that tip, it's not going to work properly. Not true. The higher the solids the clear, the more that clear wants to be atomized. The more it needs to be forced through that little tiny tip and busted up and atomized. So when you're spraying 2104, 1.2, 1.3 all the time. 1.3 is about the biggest I would go. When we're spraying out of our Pro Source gun, it's through a 1.2. When I'm spraying through the LPH 400 Extreme Orange Cap, it's a 1.3. I personally like 2104 out of the orange cap with the 1.3 almost better than anything. I had been spraying with it again recently and really liked it. But if you're using like the Pro Source gun, 1.2 all day long. I don't think it does as well with any other tip size other than a 1.2. I've gone to a 1.4 just because I had one there and it was like way too much material. It was just flooding the material on, and it's putting on all the material, but it's not atomizing it the way you want it to, and it just it's not going to look the way you want it to. So take into consideration that when you're using 2104, you really should be making sure that you use a 1.2 or a 1.3. Don't go any bigger than that. The bigger you go, the more material you're going to put, the more you could possibly have an issue. You don't want to, you're already taking a high solids clear, you're already taking a clear that has really good transfer efficiency. You don't want to overdo it by just putting a ton of material on it with using too large of a tip. I had a guy tell me the other day that he sprayed it, it looked horrible, it didn't look the way he wanted it to, what was he doing wrong? And I was like, what tip size were you using? And he was an older guy, and he didn't really, depending on who I'm talking to, depends on their skill set. And he wasn't really like a guy who sprays all the time, just kind of like a hobbyist and doesn't really know. And he was like, well, I'm using like a 1.5. And I'm like, no, 1.5 is just way too big. It's not going to function the way you want it to. You're putting way too much material out. Get a different gun. I don't care if you go to Harbor Freight and you go buy a gun for $14.95 and use a coupon. It'll still function better than you using, like a 1.5. So anyways, trying to think back because I don't like the videos to be too long. We're already 30 minutes in, so I don't know if there's any other, let me kind of go through. I have more to talk about, but I want to see if there's any questions that I've missed to see. But I've kind of been paying attention. It doesn't show me everything, so I don't see everything, but I'm pretty sure I've been seeing a lot of them. Let's see. Yes, I laughed, Brian, at your comment because everybody makes fun of me for it. Let's see. Nope, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I've seen everything so far. Okay, so one thing that I want to say also is that 2104 is direct metal. So a lot of our clears are direct metal. Actually, all of them are direct metal except for one. But a nice thing about 2104, specifically for custom guys who do gold leafing, is that because it's a direct metal clear and because it's a high solids clear, you can actually use it to lock down your gold leaf. And you can use it to brush it on. So you can actually brush your gold leaf with 2104, lock it down, have absolutely no issues doing so. It won't affect the gold leaf, and it will stick to it perfectly because it is direct metal. Take into consideration that when you're using real gold leaf and not the cheap Hobby Lobby crap, you're using the real gold leaf like you should be using, that is a metal. It would prefer a direct metal clear for proper adhesion. So any of you guys who are doing any kind of, gold leafing or anything like that, if you use 2104 to lock your work down, totally ideal for that. Definitely, if you haven't been doing that, do that. I have a lot of guys I see recommend it in pinstriping groups and different custom groups, and then they'll say, well, I don't really know if I should use that. I'm using a different clear and it works fine. You can keep using what you're using, but if you want to use a clear that's not as expensive, builds really high, super high solids, and actually does work well over gold leaf, then I would do that. So it looks like for a second it said low connection and then it came back again. I don't know why. So I'm trying to think of what else I can say about the clear that I haven't covered. You guys are watching, can you guys think of anything that I haven't covered on 2104 that I should cover? And it looks like the connection went out again, and I don't really understand that because I have perfect internet here. So yeah, 9500 would work too, because 9500 is direct to metal. The only thing to take into consideration is that 9500 is not the same solids, therefore it won't bury it as quickly as 2104 would. But yes, 9500 would work as well because it is direct to metal. So do you guys have any questions on 2104 that I maybe haven't covered? So people ask about reduction. Reduction on 2104, we always say on standard, on average, it should be 10%. Then it says things like, well, people will ask, do I have to do 10%? So I have guys who can spray 2104 and they do no reduction at all. So if you want to spray it 2-to-1, you can spray it 2-to-1, no reduction, and it works perfectly fine if you know what you're doing. Can you reduce it more than 10%? Yeah, you can reduce it 15, 20%. I have guys who can reduce it 25%. They'll say, okay, well, when I reduce it that far, am I going to have dieback issues? No, not if you're using TAMCO. Just take into consideration, because I want to kind of break this myth here, take into consideration that when you're using a lower solids clear, it's been pre-reduced for you. So when all these guys say that when I add reducer into my clear and I have issues and it causes all this to happen, if you were using a lower solids clear, like you're already basically using most of the time anyways, it's already reduced for you. Meaning when it's made and the solids content is lower and there's more solvent, it's already been reduced for you. So the myth of adding in reducer automatically causes dieback is not true. Now, can a lower solids clear be more prone to dieback because all the solvent evaporating out with poor airflow? Yes. But just the act of adding in reducer into your clear doesn't automatically make your clear have dieback issues. That's not true. So that's kind of a huge myth that I have to deal with on a regular basis. They'll say, I don't want to add reducer to my clear. If I add reducer to my clear, it's going to die back. I'm like, well, you're used to using a 40% solids clear, so 60% of that 40% solids clear is reducer that they added into it. Newsflash. So if you're okay using that and 60% of that is evaporating out and it's solvent, then you'll be okay, adding 10 to 15% reduction into your 2104 without any kind of issue. Just take into consideration that a lot of times your dieback issues is the quality of your solvent that you're using. And if you use TAMCO solvent in everything else that you're using, whether it's PPG or Exalta or whatever it may be, if you're using a real urethane grade reducer and you swap over to a TAMCO reducer, which is built better and for less, you probably will avoid a lot of your dieback issues. If adding more reducer to the 2104 cause solvent pop, no. Solvent pop is going to happen because of temperature that you're spraying in, the hardener temperature that you're using, how heavy you're actually spraying it. So solvent pop's going to happen, let's say you're spraying in 100-degree weather and you should be using, which you shouldn't do, and you use a medium hardener and you hammer it on and the clear is skimming over before the solvent can come out, you're going to get solvent pop. So that has nothing to do with the reduction of you adding reducer. All it means is that there's more solvent in the equation and therefore you could have solvent pop, but the act of adding it is not causing it. What's causing it is improper temperature of hardener, spraying way too heavy, not following proper procedures for the temperature that you're spraying in. Solvent pop can be completely eliminated if proper tech, if proper hardeners, proper reducer temperatures, proper flash, not overspraying. If all of those things are kind of, taken into consideration, you will never have a solvent pop issue. 2104 is not prone to solvent pop at all. Could you have solvent pop with 2104? Yes. Is it prone to it? Absolutely not. It's not prone to it. It's not something that it has an issue with, that it struggles with. A lot of people who use PPG clear will tell you that PPG clears are very prone to solvent pop issues. It's something that a lot of people struggle with when they're using PPG. They may like it. They may like the way that it sprays. They may like, a lot of things about it, but a downfall tends to be solvent pop. That's the nature of their clear. That's not because someone added reducer to it or anything like that. It's the resins, it's the temperatures that you're spraying in, it's whether or not you're spraying in a booth and you have too much airflow. It's all kinds of things that actually can cause something to actually just have a solvent pop issue. TAMCO clears are not just prone to having that. Now, I will say, if you're spraying in really, really hot temperatures and you're having issues with solvent pop issues because you're spraying in such hot temperatures and 2104 is way too fast for that, swap over to 2105 and all of your issues will go away. 2105 is exactly 2104. 99% of it is 2104. We take an additive that's in 2104, we eliminate 25% of that additive, and then you have 2105, which basically is a 25% slower flashing clear. Cure is the same, flash is different. Biggest thing to remember on that. So let's see, anything else? I think basically I covered a lot of 2104 information on here. I don't really know what else I can kind of discuss on it. I don't want the video to be too long because then I can't share it anywhere. Anything else you guys have questions on when it comes to 2104 that I haven't already discussed? I skipped over. I'm kind of like going through my head right now trying to think what I possibly could have not covered. I covered that it is good for bearing, for custom, it's good for restoration, it's good for collision, it's direct to metal, it can be used to bury gold leaf. It's really, really good for burying flake. You can carry flake with 2104. You can carry pearls with 2104. I really wouldn't recommend carrying candy with 2104 because I think 2104 carrying candy is too much mill build and you have to do too many coats to achieve the look. So I wouldn't use it for carrying candy almost ever. I would use a lower solids clear. What else? Let me see if there's anything else here that I've missed. I think everybody says you covered it all. I kind of think I did cover it all. I really don't know what else I can actually say on 2104 that I haven't already said, other than that you should buy it. That's the best thing I could say. You should buy 2104 and you should start buying it right now while I'm on the live with you. Something I will say, if you're on the fence about using 2104, which really you shouldn't be because it's literally $170. I mean, all the cheap clears are $170. So this is not a cheap clear. It completely blows away the really, really high quality clears. If you're on the fence with using it, you really shouldn't be. I mean, it will literally be the best $170 you've ever spent when it comes to automotive products anyways, because when you actually go to use it, you're going to be like, I can't believe this is only $170 because it doesn't spray like a $170 clear. It sprays way better. I will say that if you're going to be like on the fence of using 2104, you're not quite sure if you want to use it, if you wait to buy it on the 30th, you can take 30% off of it, and then it would be like even more ridiculously cheap than it is right now. So if you're on the fence, not sure if you want to buy it, even though $170 is not expensive, wait till the 30th. We're going to have our once annual Small Business Saturday sale where for 24 hours, everything we sell on the website other than CSI will be 30% off. So if you're, wondering whether or not you're going to like it, that would be the perfect opportunity to kind of pull the trigger and see if it's something that is going to function for you. That goes for all of our products, whether it's the clears, any of the other clears, whether it's primers, no matter what it is. That will be the best time frame for you to do it. Last year, I gained a ton of new customers who knew that the sale was coming up and they wanted to start using the product, and they're always, looking to save money, and they waited till the sale. They bought a bunch of products to try out. They fell in love with them, and then they've been using them ever since. So I like the sale for this reason, just because it kind of is like a really good incentive to just get you to buy it. I always tell people, just pull the trigger, because once you do, it sells itself. It is literally the it's like for the rest of this year, it's not that much longer left. For the rest of this year, it's going to be the best $170 you've ever spent, because I guarantee you're not spending $170 that even comes close in the automotive market for what you're getting when you get 2104. Killer clear, killer depth, killer clarity, cuts and buffs beautifully. That's what I didn't discuss. I didn't discuss cutting and buffing. People always ask me, when you're using 2104, how does it cut and buff? Awesome. It cuts and buffs awesome. It's one of these clears that when you spray it, it doesn't just start it doesn't get to a point where it actually will not buff well. A week later it buffs well. 2 weeks later it buffs well. The next day it buffs well. The only time it will not buff well is if it's cold. So I didn't discuss that part either. So let me finish this part. I'm getting off of so if you're going to cut and buff it, the next day, it has to be above 70 degrees for 12 hours for it to cut and buff. If you go to cut and buff it, and it's not literally the best cutting and buffing clear you've ever used, it's not cured. Now, in the summer, that's not an issue. In the spring, it's really not an issue. In the fall and into the winter, it's going to be an issue. Like today, it was 40 degrees here in Virginia. 2104 is not going to function in 40-degree weather. It can't function in that weather. So if it sits in that weather for the whole rest of the day, and then at night it's getting 30, your garage, your shop, your whatever is getting that temperature too. It means your clear is literally doing nothing. It's in hibernation. It can't cure. It won't cut and buff. It won't function. Nothing. So the only way for that to happen would be to put heaters in your garage, your shop, wherever it would be. Put a bullet heater in there. I kind of think a bullet heater is probably about the best thing you could possibly do when you're done spraying. You can literally put a bullet heater in a booth and in less than an hour get it well over 100 degrees and be done. If you can get your clear to 140 for 30 minutes, you've baked it. If you can get your clear up to 100 degrees for a couple hours, it's going to cure the way it needs to for the rest of the time frame, especially if you just turn the heater off, close the doors. Well, don't close the doors all the time because the solvent won't evaporate. It won't be able to escape. But if you do it for a period of time, just to kind of help bake it and then open the doors and let it breathe, that will help cure it. If you guys have access to none of those heaters, kicking it out in the sun, direct sunlight the next day for a couple hours, bringing it back inside to cool down, that will help force cure it. The sun is about one of the best things you can do at any period of time to help force cure a clear. 2104 for all of you guys right now who've been using it and have never used it in the winter, you're going to struggle. That is the only thing I can actually say about a downfall of this clear. You have so much material put on a vehicle that it needs to have heat to force it to cure. And if it's going to get really cold, like it's going to for a lot of people, and I see a lot of you guys posting pictures right now on Facebook where it's snowing where you live, if that's what the conditions in that you're in and you can't control your temperature, you're going to struggle using this clear. It's just how it is. Our clears are not blended. They're 100% acrylic urethane. They have nothing in them that's going to function in the cold. So make sure you take the proper steps or procedures to get heat or don't use it. That's the best thing I can say, because if I have people who, used it for months and months in the summer, absolutely loved it, and over the course of the years, they get to winter, and you're going to start seeing in Facebook, I call it right now, you're going to start seeing people complaining that their clear doesn't cut well, doesn't buff well, and doesn't flow well, and doesn't actually dry. And that's going to happen because the weather's changing, and nobody can make it work. That's how it is. If you do things where you get heaters, infrared lamps, torch heaters, things like that, you won't struggle. But if you're going to try to use this kind of clear, really any of our clears other than our fast clears, if you try to use these clears in the temperatures that are coming up for the next couple months, you're going to suck. Like your life is going to suck. You're not going to like it. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be hard. It's just the nature of our clears. I have guys that they cannot control their temperature at all, and they stop using TAMCO in the winter because they have no choice. There are guys who have, I don't know why you can't control your temperature. I kind of feel like anybody should be able to put a heater in their garage or in their shop. I feel like anybody could if they wanted to, but I do have people that actually stop using TAMCO in the winter because they cannot get their shops warm enough to justify using it when their cheaper clears will function in those temperatures. And cheaper clears will function in those temperatures because cheaper clears have enamelized resins in them that allow them to function in the cold. We don't do that, so they won't function in the cold. So what's the shelf life of 2104? Years. 2104 will last you years. The only thing that's going to have a true shelf life is your hardener. Our hardeners are built well. We build them well. They're of really good ingredients, really good solvents. They're built well. Our hardener will last every bit of a year opened. I have hardeners that I have been sitting well over a year. I'll crack the top on them, check them, see what they look like. They're still crystal clear. If you can look down into your hardener, you can see the bottom of the can. There's no crystallization. There's no cloudiness to it. You're good to go. If you start to see crystallization, if you start to see cloudiness, it means moisture got into it and it's no longer any good. Remember, every time you open your hardener, moisture is being introduced into it. Every time you close it, you're trapping that moisture in there. Over time, that can start make the hardener go bad. The one thing that will make a hardener go bad is moisture. So every time you open it, make sure you seal it well, make sure you keep it in a good climate controlled area, and then you won't have issues and your hardener will last even longer. So I kind of think, let me see, I'm bringing some parts to my work Saturday. Can't wait to see the faces when I'm done. How long for 2 bullet heaters? If you were to put 2 bullet heaters in like an average booth, you'd probably have it 200 degrees. They work well. 1 bullet heater is all you need. A torch heater or bullet heater in your booth, works really, really well, and it gets hot fast. I mean, I've had guys that stand in there with like a heat gun and just kind of put it on the part while they have the torch heater going, and it gets really fast. As long as you get 2104 up to 140 degrees for 30 minutes, it's done. You've baked it. It'll be all it needs. It'll have the curing that it needs over the next, however long. So if you can get that kind of temperature range for 30 minutes, you're good to go. If you can get it up to 100 degrees for 20 minutes, you're fine. Over the next course of the day or whatever, it'll force cure the rest of the way, and you'll be good to go. So if you take, proper steps, you can make 2104 work for you in the winter. I'm not trying to scare you guys out of using it. Just don't think that you can continue to do the same things and not take heat into consideration, because if you don't take your heat into consideration, it will not function the way that you want it to. So let's see, anything else? I don't think there's anything else I can talk about that I haven't already discussed. It's been going on for about 47 minutes, which is a little bit longer than I usually want to do anyways. So I appreciate you guys checking it out. Hopefully I answered everything. I know I talk fast. I apologize. I know the material and I talk fast, which, sorry, I try to slow it down. And hopefully, I can take some more medicine and not die of the flu. I feel better right now, so that's good. Won't the kerosene in the bullet heater cause fish eyes? No, that's a myth. I have guys ask me that all the time. That won't cause that to happen. Let's see. Nope, I don't think there's anything else I need to answer that I haven't already answered. So if you guys go back to the beginning of the video, that's the nice thing about a live video. You can always go back. You can watch them at any time. If you missed the beginning of what I said, go back and watch it. Catch up on what you missed. You can go back and watch it at different times for reference. It's another reason I like live videos, because you can always go back and reference it if you have a question. You can always go back and just read comments, different things like that. Hopefully this will save on my phone and not say that my phone is too full, and then I will share it on the like page as well. When it's on the like page, you guys can actually share the videos on your personal pages to other people that may have questions about 2104, questions about TAMCO in general. Hopefully the video was helpful for you guys and answered any questions you may have. Remember, 11/30, 30% off of everything on TAMCO's website except for CSI. That includes the custom colors. It includes everything. So if you guys have been wanting custom colors and you haven't pulled the trigger on them, 30% off of custom colors one time a year. Make sure you buy whatever you need. Mixed paint does not have a shelf life. You can shake it up whenever you want to and use it. So if you're not even going to have a project, that you're not working on for the next 7-8 months, definitely buy it. Put it on the shelf. Shake it up when you're ready to use it. Take advantage of that sale. It will not happen again for another year. I appreciate you guys' support and for watching the video. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you learned a couple things, and I want to see people be buying 2104. So when I get off here, I expect to see some sales come in on 2104 from people who have not used it, because you will not be let down. I appreciate it. Have a good night. Stay safe. See you guys later.